My name is Molly, and I work as a public servant in a small town. 8 years ago, I married my husband, Michael, who is also a public servant. However, since our jobs require us to move frequently, we live apart. We don't have any children. Every evening at 9 p.m., I get a WhatsApp message from my husband. It usually says something like, "I have a meeting tonight, too." I reply, "You have a hard time every night. When will you be able to come home?" His response is always, "I don't know, unsure," and that's the end of our conversation. This has been the only kind of talk we've had in our 8 years of marriage. We've never lived together, so people might think ours is just a marriage of convenience, but in our line of work, this isn't unusual. We're both federal civil servants, specifically soldiers. We get transferred to different military bases every 2 to 3 years, and each time, our living situation changes. 2 years ago, during one of our WhatsApp chats, I asked, "Should I buy an apartment in Jackson, Mississippi, my hometown?" Michael replied, "That sounds great. I hope I get stationed in Jackson, too." "Of course you should, we are a couple, after all." I teased him, "Why are you denying it? Are we really a couple?" His reply was short, "Why are you saying such silly things? Still at work. See you tomorrow, bye." 2 years ago, I went ahead and bought the apartment in Jackson, where my parents live. I plan to live there even after I retire. If Michael ever gets stationed in Jackson, we plan to live together. One day, instead of a WhatsApp message, Michael called me, which was unusual. He said, "Hey, my parents are planning a trip from Eugene, Oregon, to Kentucky. When they pass through Mississippi, can they stay at your apartment?" I agreed and said, "Sure, Michael, it's been a while since I last saw them." He simply responded, "Thank you, bye." Even though the phone call was rare, Michael's response was cold. I realized I hadn't seen my in-laws since our wedding, which felt like ages ago. Since I'm based in Mississippi, Michael moves around the country, and his parents live in Eugene, Oregon. We hardly get a chance to meet. Excited to finally see my in-laws, I offered to show them around my hometown, Jackson. When they arrived, we exchanged greetings. "Molly, long time no see, how have you been?" they asked. I replied, "I'm doing well, thank you." Michael's parents apologized for not meeting up more often because Michael lives alone most of the time. I reassured them, saying, "Don't worry, we're like air to each other." That's exactly what it felt like. Michael and I were like air to each other, neither close nor distant. Since they were visiting Mississippi, I offered to take them to see the Windsor ruins, a famous site in the area. As we toured the ruins, they commented on how impressive they were, comparing them to the Shelton McMurphy Johnson house in Eugene. My father-in-law was comparing the Windsor ruins in Mississippi with the Shelton McMurphy Johnson house from their hometown, Eugene, Oregon. He admired both places and mentioned that parts of the house in Eugene had been damaged in an earthquake 6 years ago, and the unrepaired sections had to be demolished. "That's a shame," I replied. Then I suggested, "Next, let's visit the petrified forest." I spent the whole day showing my in-laws around the attractions of Mississippi. My mother-in-law really liked the city and even started talking about living there. She said, "I've fallen in love with Mississippi." "Thank you, Molly. Would it be okay if I stayed here for a while?" I said, "Of course. I'm usually not home during the day, so I'll give you a spare key." I handed her the key, thinking they'd stay for 4 or 5 days, but a week passed, and they showed no signs of leaving. Eventually, I made them an offer. "If you love it here so much, I could lease the apartment to you for $600 a month. I can stay at my parents' house in the meantime." To my surprise, my father-in-law got really angry. "What on earth are you thinking? Asking family to pay rent? You should let us stay for free." My mother-in-law quickly stepped in to calm him down, but the situation still made me feel uneasy. So, I suggested, "How about this? You just cover the cost of utilities, electricity, water, and gas." One day during their second week at my place, I got a phone call while I was at work. It was the property manager, Brian. He told me, "We got a call from the downstairs neighbors. They said there's a water leak coming from your apartment, and it's staining their ceiling. Can you come over right away? We can't go inside without your permission." I couldn't leave work immediately, but I managed to return to the apartment during my lunch break. When I walked in with the property manager, my mother-in-law looked surprised. "Oh, Molly, what brings you here? What about work?" I explained. "The people downstairs said there might be a water leak from this apartment." She seemed clueless and replied, "A water leak? I don't know anything about that." Whether she truly didn't know or was pretending, I wasn't sure, so I walked past her to check near the washing machine. The washing machine was spinning, but the hose had come loose, causing a mess. This is the problem, I thought. I went downstairs with the property manager, and we were allowed to check the ceiling. Sure enough, there was a large stain spreading from where the washing machine was located. I sighed in frustration. My mother-in-law came to see the damage, looking guilty, and quickly went back upstairs. I had to apologize to the neighbors downstairs, bringing them a box of cookies, and I also got billed for the repair costs by the property management. When I told my mother-in-law, she lashed out, saying, "So, you're telling us to leave, huh? We're not going anywhere that easily. Should we just pack up and go?" The complaints didn't stop there. Soon after, the property manager called again with another issue. I braced myself. This time, the complaint was about my father-in-law singing loudly on the balcony at night, disturbing the neighbors. Frustrated, I went to the apartment, only to find my in-laws were gone. They left a note saying, "Thanks for your hospitality, we're heading back to Seattle." I couldn't believe it. They had left without paying for any of the utilities they used, and they left behind a ton of garbage. "At least take out your trash," I muttered to myself. With them gone, I moved back into my apartment from my parents' house. One day, my husband called unexpectedly. He said, "My parents love your apartment, so I'm giving it to them as a gift. Understand? If you don't agree, we're getting a divorce." In the background, I could hear my mother-in-law laughing. After leaving my apartment, my in-laws had moved into their son's government housing. Instead of talking to me directly, they had manipulated my husband into demanding that I give up my apartment. Now, I was forced to make a choice. I either give up the apartment I worked so hard for or get a divorce. I thought long and hard, feeling torn. Finally, I made up my mind. 2 days later, my husband called, but instead of texting me through WhatsApp, he said angrily, "You'll pay for this." That same day, when he gave me the ultimatum to choose between the apartment or a divorce, I sent him the divorce papers by express mail. He was furious, as he didn't expect me to act so decisively. Not even a week later, my boss called me into the office. To my shock, I received a transfer order to Dallas. It turned out that my ex-husband, who handled personnel, had pulled some strings to harass me because I refused to give up my apartment. I won't forget this, I thought. But what about my apartment? Should I give in and rent it to my ex's parents? I wasn't sure what to do, so I went to see the legal affairs officer at my workplace. The officer told me, "You have no connection to your ex-husband anymore, so you're not related to his parents either. I think you should rent it out as a landlord." That's exactly what I was thinking. I immediately called my in-laws, who had returned to Portland, and told them that I was ready to rent my apartment out. When I was transferred to Dallas, my in-laws surprisingly agreed to rent the apartment without any hassle. It turned out it wasn't harassment, they just really liked the place. I set a rent of $700 a month, including utility bills and the cost of the repairs from before, and they accepted it without any fuss. While working in Dallas, I was also studying for a highly competitive internal selection exam. Only a few senior military officers get to the top level, and the biggest challenge was passing the exam to enter the command staff course. This course trains future unit commanders, and those who complete it are assigned to lead units all over the country. It wasn't so much about wanting power or control. I was driven by the desire to outrank my ex-husband and prove myself. To my delight, I passed the tough exam on the first try and was admitted to the command staff course. Watch this, Michael, I thought. The real revenge starts now. The course was held at the military officer school in New York, where my ex-husband lived. Even though he handled personnel matters, and probably knew I had passed, I didn't reach out to him, and he didn't contact me either. 16 months later, I completed the course and became a unit commander in charge of training soldiers in Nebraska. Coincidentally, my ex-husband was also assigned to Nebraska, where he worked at the Regional Cooperation Headquarters, handling military and local community relations. Thanks to the internal exam, I now outranked him. One day, during a training session for newly arrived senior officers in Nebraska, my ex-husband saw me and came straight over. The first thing he said was, "Why are you wearing a rank insignia that's higher than mine?" His outburst caught everyone by surprise, including the higher-ups around us. I calmly brushed it off, feeling satisfied inside. I thought to myself, "I'm no longer stuck with someone like you." It was a beautiful, sunny Sunday, the day of the annual base open day. This event gave regular citizens a rare chance to interact with military personnel. The atmosphere was lively, with children and adults cheering as they admired the tanks on display. The combat training simulation, where soldiers descended from a helicopter in a dramatic, Spider-Man-like fashion, left everyone amazed. People were taking photos with soldiers in camouflage, and many were excited to grab commemorative merchandise. As a training coordinator, I was stationed at a booth where citizens could try out the forward-leaning rest position alongside active servicemen. That's when my ex-husband appeared, bringing some members of the Parents Association. Seeing him made all my pent-up feelings of revenge toward him and my former in-laws flare up. It felt like the perfect moment to act. This is my chance for revenge. Without thinking, I called out to him and his parents, inviting them over to the booth. Reluctantly, my ex-husband joined in. I handed him an iron helmet and lined him up with the other servicemen. "All right," I announced. "In the military, we give everyone a number instead of calling them by name. I'm going to start the numbering. The person on the right says 1, then the next person says 2, and so on." I placed my ex-husband in the number 1 spot, lining him up with a mix of servicemen and regular citizens. "Numbering, start," I called out. 1, he said slowly. "You're too slow. When I say start, you respond right away," I snapped. Watching my ex-husband stand at attention like a soldier made me want to laugh. This is hilarious. Next, we moved on to practice the forward-leaning rest position. The instructor, a serviceman, explained the procedure. After the participants practiced several times and got the hang of it, I took over. "Now we're going to simulate combat training," I announced. "Soldiers, be mindful of where you're pointing your muzzles. For those without guns, just pretend." I gave orders to the 9 participants. "Target the tree ahead, move forward, but stay low, using the tree as cover. Keep your guns pointed toward the enemy, and move in teams using a bounding overwatch technique." Then I gave the command, "Number 1, bounding overwatch, move forward." I decided to push my ex-husband to his limits with my orders. "What are you doing? Number 1, you're too slow, move forward," I yelled. My ex-husband, though reluctant, followed my commands. "Number 1, you're standing too tall, you're going to get shot. Do you want to die, Number 1? I kept pushing him as he crawled around the ground with his rifle, looking completely defeated. Under the hot sun, he barely managed to say, "Number 1. Your voice is too quiet. Say it again," I ordered. Suddenly, laughter erupted from the crowd. The spectators, who didn't know we were ex-spouses, thought it was funny to see a female commander bossing around a male soldier. However, my ex-husband's parents watched with grim faces. In the military world, rank is everything. My ex-husband had always used his higher rank to try and dominate me, both at work and in our personal life. There's even a saying that there's a rank system among military wives. His parents, who had always looked down on me, loved the attention he got, even though it was more because of his rank than his character. Fueled by frustration, I took the selection exam and passed it on the first try, completely flipping the situation. It felt amazing to show my ex-husband and his parents who was really in charge, especially in front of them, as they had always thought their son was so important. The way I berated him had a huge impact on them. A few days later, my ex-in-laws called to say they were moving out of the apartment. This meant I could finally stop commuting from my parents' house and move back into my own place. Ironically, I still run into my ex-husband here and there. Seeing the grimace on his face each time has become a secret little pleasure of mine.